Hey gang, I'm me, you're you, and that makes this a Chainstitch Tips shorty. I've been getting a lot of questions recently about how to assemble and install the Wormgear on a chain embroidery machine. So let's learn about it. Our Chareco Wormgear is what's known as a quick change style Wormgear. This allows the machine operator to quickly change back and forth between chain stitch and chenille stitch. The Wormgear assembly is comprised of 4 parts: the Wormgear, spring, collar, and collar set screw. Setup requires 2 small flathead screwdrivers to put the Wormgear together and a medium round tool to get the Wormgear onto the machine. My favorite tool to use for this is a bit extender from the Chapman Manufacturing sewing machine screwdriver set, and you'll see why later in this video. To assemble the Wormgear, insert the spring into the Wormgear cavity. Next, place the Wormgear collar in the cavity on top of the spring. At this point, I like to place one of the small screwdrivers through the collar, spring, and Wormgear. This allows me to depress the collar far enough into the Wormgear so that I can add the collar set screw. Place the set screw in the collar's threaded hole and turn it clockwise, 1 full rotation. Your Wormgear is now assembled. It's easy once you know the trick to depressing the collar and spring. And I have a similar trick for installing the Wormgear onto the machine. Because the collar sits in the Wormgear at an angle, it can be difficult to slide it onto the Wormgear operating rod. This is where I like to use my Chapman bit extension to push against the spring-loaded collar. This action will align the collar with the operating rod, allowing the Wormgear to slide onto the machine. Easy peasy. Now you know how to assemble and install the Wormgear on your Chainstitch embroidery machine. If you'd like to learn more about how to adjust the looper timing on your machine, check out our long-form videos on Patreon. See you next time.